of content. It's an overarching view that they have taken on the use of technology. The second thing that I would like to mention is that we have within our country a very diverse set of colleges and universities. We have from the government side IIMs and IITs, which are highly technology driven. And we have in rural areas some colleges which might not have the required network, forget about the technology. So, in a diverse set of circumstances like this, the government has taken to setting up 150 gram panchayats having the optical fiber, which will enable most of these colleges to, and another 1.5 lakh gram panchayats will be getting the optical fiber within the next 2 years. This is what is our target. This is about the lower part. About the upper echelons of universities and colleges, which includes a lot of technology-driven private colleges also, the admission process, because of the high demand for IIMs and IITs, becomes a very challenging task without the face-to-face counseling part. So there have been a lot of initiatives taken by the alumni associations of these colleges, which are very active. So they spread messages about the culture of the institutions, which otherwise private universities have to do it themselves. So the alumni associations pitch in and they create digital storytelling so that the students give testimonials on the fantastic fun they had during the shooting of Three Idiots in IIM Bangalore, and so on and so forth. So it creates a charisma for the prospective students to come and take admission. The second that they try and do is between the, suppose let's say UCLA has a collaboration with one IIT, then they have a virtual student exchange in which some students of our IIT would be talking to faculty of UCLA, and some faculty of our would be talking to students of you. So a fantastic exchange of students is also happening virtually. This is a very COVID phenomenon. And I think this is something which could be replicated in non-compete, non-geography, non-same geography universities and colleges in India. The third and most important thing before we can go to the other panelists is that we have a minimum touch policy in place. So there is a policy by the Government of India, which is a COVID policy. So we are trying to showcase to the public at large that how the student comes to campus whenever he comes. There is a minimum touch policy already in place. So the periodicity of the sanitization, the payment, which is cashless, so they don't need to touch anything, how there is a film which avoids the virus on all the door handles, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that we have done.
Sure, I think brilliant. I think so. You covered quite a few points. So, moving to Mr. Vineet, for somebody like you, who are running this, university in Odisha, right? Generally, the way to do outreach during the admission process was predominantly print, PR, radio, television, and that was the core medium through it. Maybe complemented by a bit of webinars or physical webinars where you go and educate about your new brand and things. But now, because of COVID and also because of a millennial population that we have, a Gen Z as we call it, digital adverts, your website SEO, and digital discovery becomes very, very critical. So what are your initiatives and thoughts at Centurion University for your admission and marketing team? Are they seeing this still even after COVID because of the geographical nature that you are located, more of a conventional outreach, or is it a combination of conventional and digital, or is it more tilted towards digital? So
the Centurion, I don't know what your definition of young is, but is a university that's about a decade old since we formally became a university. Although our origins in south of Orissa in Parle-Khumundi started in 2005, is where it started growing out from. And traditionally, we've always the co-founders, unlike a lot of other universities, are academics themselves. They started their life in corporates, etc., and then subsequently took this as a choice, and hence Century as an animal has always grown, very differently compared to some conventional universities, to the extent that we are basically were Odisha's or other countries' first skill university, so to speak, and have always relied on experiential learning a lot more than classroom teaching, so to speak. So this entire pandemic story, kind of hit us a lot more than possibly it will hit a conventional university, purely because of the experiential learning. So even if you come to our campus, in Jatni or in Parlakhandi and the new one in Andhra Pradesh, etc., you basically would feel as if you're entering an industrial establishment. Obviously we have the academic and the administrative side of things, but we also have a lot of ventures on campus that are nurtured, by the university, like a transformer workshop, etc., and so on and so forth. So, as far as admissions are concerned, and as far as transition to, so to speak, digital is concerned, we'd actually started that way back in August 2019 as a deliberate choice, even before pandemic came, because we did realize that the possibilities of optimizing, the faculty, etc., that we have, and the limited resources like a university like ours basically works on, digital possibly would be not just I would say a growth story, but almost existential. I mean, if we didn't transition, it'll be a slow creeping death in terms of the way the courses, etc., were panning out. So from an admissions perspective also, we were focusing quite heavily on digital. Obviously, we had to jig our portfolio of investments that we make for admissions outreach. There were a lot of stuff that was print, and some of the geographies that we work in, for example, in rural Bihar, for example, or Jharkhand, or parts of Orissa, etc. Outdoor media still is a big thing. Hoarding still work at specific locations, so on and so forth. So we had to rejig that and relied, I would say, out of the total admissions that I've had this year, almost 60 to 70% are driven largely by whatever we could do on the digital story.
Amazing.
And thankfully, the team that we have, plus the partners that we're working with, various platforms, as well as our own digital media agency, are very, very outcome driven. That's something that we insisted on right from the start. And that's possibly, the background that I have. I am not a education person. So somebody addressed me as a doctor, I'm not. I am a standard engineer, MBA, consulting all my life kind of a career, and then was outside the country, boomed and back. And if you ask me about Orissa in 2015, I possibly knew, Konark Temple, Puri, and Sambalpur Dam. And little did I know that I'll be living in Orissa in the next few years. So my consulting work brought me to Orissa. That sort of brings in a very different kind of a mindset to education setup, which is used to working in a very different kind of a mind frame. It's rather ironic that our business school teaches, performance management to a whole lot of students. But unfortunately, when it comes to applying it to us, educationists are very averse to outcomes. So, that's the bit that we started pushing at Centurion quite heavily, because, the way I define the university is very simple. We're a skill university. If I have only two products, if my student who's employable and a student who's an entrepreneur, there's no third product. There are 10, 15, 20% of our students that go for higher education. But if I'm not ticking the boxes on these two, then as a university, I may have the best infrastructure, I may have the 5-axis CNC, and I may have a digital design lab. It's all a waste. We're not using that properly. Sure. So those are the kind of things that we simplified the agenda down to. And that's the messaging that we've basically given out in the market. The fact that I could place 75 to 80% of my students, the fact that my average salary that the students could command was far higher, the fact that I could nurture about 20 students to go into their own entrepreneurship through our Center for Innovation and Innovators and Entrepreneurs, etc. Obviously supported by government and startup Orissa and things like that. But largely the story that we took out was this, and that seemed to have worked. So if you look at my digital push, like I mentioned, about 70% of my admissions are largely from there. And any campaign that we run, we could establish a very significant level of causality. That if this worked, how many leads actually came in, and how many were we able to then convert to the right course, or how many will be able to coach. But some of the challenges mentioned by Dr. Jawahar, in terms of counseling and so on and so forth, that's obviously become very hard. We did a lot of Zoom sessions, we did a lot of webinars, engaged parents and so on and so forth. But that only goes as far. You don't have that engaged conversation with a counselor to be able to coach the student to the right course. So we've maintained, to mitigate that, we have maintained an extreme level of flexibility for the students, that even after, because we follow a choice-based credit system, even after you do the foundation courses, you realize you made the wrong choice. We will give you that flexibility to shift, because you yet haven't gone into your core courses, and hence I can either change the specialization within the same school, or I may decide that this BTech is not for me, and I actually want to jump to a BSc or a applied science or applied mathematics kind of a course. So that's how we've sort of played this whole thing out.
No, I think first of all, congratulations. I mean, 70% digital-driven admissions, so is in itself and you're absolutely right. This would have not been possible in a year's effort, because marketing takes some type of gestational period for the brand to get established. So it must be an effort for a few years that probably has panned out at the right point in time. So people on the panel, so it's a bit so important point of juncture where 70% of admissions for Centurion University, located primarily in Odisha, are driven by digital. So moving from that point to Dr. Shashmita, to you. So KIT is like a prestigious and old organization in that way, and a pretty renowned, so as to speak in that case. So during this COVID, and as we were talking about, what does digitization of admission means for the university? What happened this year as compared to last year? Are you seeing some changes in your university? If the answer to that is of course yes, then what are those changes, and what are you going to do to make sure that the university is prepared this year and beyond for from an admission digitization perspective, right? And also talk about a bit about spend. So like, where are the enrollments coming from? Because that tells us that how students are discovering you. Is it same like Centurion, or is it like a combination of offline and online? That's my question to you.
Thank you, Abhishek. As digitization after COVID-19, I would like to put here that KIT started its online examination process in 2005 itself. I remember that in 2005, another one institution, BITS Pilani and KIT online entrance examination process. And if we see the integration of technology with education system, perhaps in this country since last 2 decades, the efforts have been made how the education can be integrated with the technology. The students can get benefit out of that. So always the effort is there. And in last 1 decade, lots of efforts have been put for digitization of education system. This country has come out with lots of courses. We have developed lots of platforms like Swayam, NPTEL by IITs, and different platforms have been developed. And all academic institutions are putting lots of effort to get integrated with that. And some institutions out of that. So in my university, our system is that this is a very large university, and this is an integrated university. We are having around 200 courses across the discipline, starting from engineering, management, medicine, social sciences, biotechnology, even all discipline. And while one university is running with 30,000 students with 200 program, we are having different segment with that. As I said, that this is an integrated university, because whatever Mr. Vineet was talking about his university now, KIT is a very flexible university where the students, those who are pursuing engineering, they are allowed to take courses from law. They are allowed to take courses from medicine. They can take courses from dental sciences, and lots of multidisciplinary happens here. And we are also having a separate segment for the skill development program. And for the students of higher learning, those who are engaged in skill development, they are also engaged in skill development program in different level. The elementary skill development program, 5, 6, it is for the students of the dropout students and the 10th pass students, and the higher level of skill development program for the undergrad and postgrad students. A different type of integral system is there. We are having technology business incubation center, what promotes the entrepreneurship and also the employability of the students, that is funded by Government of India Department of Science and Technology. And coming to the admission process, I hope that in any educational institution, admission process is mostly driven by the alumni and its students. Whatever Mr. Jawahar was saying, that the admission of any educational institution particularly, it is driven by its alumni students. They are far and city. And next is the parents. Normally in our country, though we get the students in our university campus from 50 countries, but what I believe that the parents in our country, they all act as brand ambassador for any university. They are the second brand ambassador. Third, while we come for the advertisement through different media, it can be the mass media, it can be the print media, anything else, whatever we are following today. And as you are saying, we organize the webinars, we organize different physical events. Yes, of course, most of the academic institutions, they are engaged in promoting different academic activities and also different events. They associate with different professional bodies for promotion of their own institution, because in private institution, they have to make their own brand. And here in my university, we personally believe that any university is very much human-centric. Today, while we talk about marketing, we only don't talk about that reaching to the customer. That time is already over. Second, while discussing about marketing, targeting the audience and reaching to them, that time is also already over. And now while we talk about marketing, we talk about the human preference, their choice and their emotions, and how to connect with that, and how to get integrated with that being and be the integral part of their lives. That becomes the marketing today. And while slowly we are shifting to digital, as we are discussing after COVID-19, sometimes we are finding people are scared about taking newspaper. They are scared about subscribing for different print materials because it may carry the virus. So we are thinking to more go for the digital marketing this year. Of course, we are also doing the same thing, though we are there in digital space since last 10 years. Now we have little bit increased our participation in digital marketing in a more, I can say that, more effective way.
Sure.
There are we are trying to explore lots of means for that. And but one few things we have to take care of this year, I can say that we are very much particular about that. And while coming to the digital marketing, one is content, second is originality. Because if we go to the print media, if KIT is giving one advertisement, while people see it, they see the name of KIT and they just read out that advertisement. But while you go to the digital space, while we want to communicate through digital space, people, while they go to read through the advertisements, they see lakhs of options with them in front of them. And while we communicate the message, the originality of the institution for what KIT stands for, its research, academics, its employment, as KIT says that since its inception, it's achieving 10% employment, or its human development center, as KIT is doing lots of social initiative. What really KIT want to communicate through that advertisement itself? That becomes the major concern while we go for the digital marketing itself. Yes, this time we are focusing on digital marketing, and our basic focus is research and innovation. Now KIT is one of the institute of eminence in the country because of its its achievement in academics, its achievement in research and innovations. And what we find, the students of KIT, those who come out from KIT itself, yes, we ensure that all of them are employable. Not even 90%, we ensure that 10% of the students are employable. From the campus, 90 to 95% students take the placement. And the students, those who go for the higher studies, sometimes they deny for the placement. We find from undergrad, around 20% students are going abroad for the higher studies, or they're getting enrollment in premier institutions of this country, maybe IIM, maybe some in IITs for MTechs and all.
So I think
for this
year, sure, go ahead, please complete it.
Yeah. So as I said, that KIT has developed as a human development center. And our basic focus, while we attract the students, we want to give the confidence that each one of the student who is being enrolled in this campus, not only they will be getting a certificate or degree from this campus, but they will be exposed to diverse opportunities, and they will be getting the scope to engage with that opportunities to get right kind of experience according to their aspiration. We have developed a system at the aspiration and dream of the students at the input, and through these opportunities, through the system, while they are going through, they get the success in their life. That is the key of this, of our university.
Good. So I thank you. Very beautifully articulated. And I think one of the things that you really mentioned, which is a question for Dr. Sarkar for me, is that in a digital world, your narrative and your messaging goes out with a higher frequency that as compared to print media. So it might be the case that a newspaper ad might come probably month, couple of times or 2 times, but a Google ad or a Facebook ad can probably flash 50 times during a day to an audience. So the messaging, the narrative, and the positioning of the brand of the institute becomes very, very critical and very, very important. So, so Dr. Sarkar, for you, when the institute is located in a particular area of the country, a lot of students who might come into the university there might be a hyper local effect to it. They might be from Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand, and so on and so forth. How does that change your marketing and messaging as a matter of fact? And I asked the same question to Mr. Atul Khosla, because Shulini University is in Solan. So there is a hyper local effect there because of the being in Himachal. The same question is to you is that and with 3 elements during the COVID and the pandemic after that, where physical proximity is increasing a lot, people are not a bit of apprehensive to come to the campus personally, right? And being hyper local at the same time. How are you seeing, what are the trends are you seeing as far as students applying to you? Is it diversifying across the country? Is it still hyper local? A, and B, how are you reaching out to them? Like what's the digital marketing strategy for that? So you're mute.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek, for your question. Actually, if you just know this university, that New India University, it is situated in a very remote place in West Bengal, and that our objective is totally different. Our chairman, Dr. Harshavardhan, Niyotya, he is having a different state of mind. He is interested to give these educations to the that underprivileged section. And if you see that history of this university, though it was started in 2005, it has got the momentum from maybe just in a couple of years back, maybe 2-3 years back. And the thing is that we that university believes in that the quality, and as Dr. Shmita mentioned, that it is a human capital development center. So it is also same in case of our university as well. And we are particularly believe in research. It is one of the research based university, and the last 2-3 years we have done a marvelous job in the research activities. And if you see that in the growth of this university in terms of admissions, it will be maybe 500 times than the last few years. So in this COVID situation, we have done further better even when there was no COVID event. So this university is one of the tech-based university, and we are using this online and offline mode from the beginning itself. Yes, it is correct that from this year that online things has become more prominent, and we are giving more focus on these particular things. But that unlike other universities, we don't give any kind of advertisement. And probably you have seen that probably a very few advertisement you'll see about New University. We give on our efficiency, that is our students, our brand ambassador. That means that the students, when they'll be passing out, they'll be talking about this university, and we believe in that particular phenomenon. And if you see that activities and other things, the vice chancellor and the professors and other peoples are very, very eminent in their respective research field. If you see that that the next progress of what we are doing right now, we are just thinking to implement this artificial intelligence and augmented reality in admissions sector as well. Although we have started this functions, and we have started this artificial intelligence and machine learning in a very good way. Probably you have seen that probably another one university, that is Reliance University. This group, they are having a new university that was started that same thing. And we are getting a very significant result in terms of applications of artificial intelligence in admissions and student selections. Because we believe that that university should select and give that equitable what I can say justification for student selections. And if you see that structure of fees that we collect from the students, it is beyond match. That means, we are not, charging at all, FT, that other universities are doing. Most of the university, students in this university are, getting, scholarship from our, organization itself. And a lot of, poor peoples, that underprivileged peoples, they are getting that scope for higher education. And we are doing, really, good job in this way. And I'm very strongly believe that if we do these things, in coming, few years, will be, one of the eminent, universities, in this country. And if you see, that research and incubation center of our university, we are unparalleled to anybody, at least in this eastern part of, India. And as you mentioned that, this, that admission technologies and other things, so what I can mention that in terms of, admission technology, we should say that, this is a new technique that artificial intelligence we have applied this year. And in, next few years, we are trying to, make it, more, visible across that, in that country.
Sure.
And that is, what I want to mean that, so the students and other things, are, doing, good in terms of research, even if we are going online, education at this point of time. But yes, there are significant, progress in terms of our education delivery system.
Beautiful. I think you mentioned something which is very close to my heart. I mean, application of data science in admissions, because if you look at it, understanding the student journey across various touch points and comparing it with a student from the past, because your past students who are passing out, like as we mentioned, alumni, they are the right leading indicators for the incoming student with a core common behavior. So
yes, that is our fundamental belief, that we believe that, no advertisement, rather, activities. And probably we are the, giving the minimum advertisement, in maybe in a channel, news channel, or probably you not see at a single, advertisement in news channel, or maybe, in other, print media, very nominal. And maybe we are giving that, advertisement like, we need some faculty kind of things.
Sure.
Otherwise, probably there is no such advertisement.
So one of the things also, and I'm moving to Dr. Jawahar to you, one of the things that is also changing is how a student perceives the course, taking a course leading to employability. And there are platforms like Upgrad, Eruditus, and things like that. These are, edtech platforms who are either collaborating with the education institutes of all shapes and sizes, universities per se, Coursera being another one of them, or they are giving out their own courses. And it's like a student today passing out from +2 has a choice to go on Code Academy, or to go to Coursera or Udacity, Udemy, or even the likes of Upgrad, and do a product management or an engineering or a data science course there, right? And we are seeing a lot of collaboration between university and these private players. So from, more from a government and more of a government's kind of, I would view towards these things. How do you see this? Is this more of a co-opetition between the private and the existing education institutes, or is also, student have one or the other choice? So what are your views on that?
So that's a good way to put it, but I'll speak it in general terms. First of all, there is a set curriculum that the university might be delivering. There might be a flexibility in the choice of subjects, but having said that, there even with the latest upgradation, there is a set subjects that you are being taught. Now, apart from that, each student might have his own choices, that I want to do this, that I want to learn music, I want to do that. So there are MOOCs available everywhere, which you can audit for free. And in this COVID time,
I think we lost Dr. Jawahar for a second. Dr. Jawahar, you there?
That is one. Second part is again coming back to the admission. It just puts a thought in my mind that instead of just showing the teacher testimonials, if a teacher is a small MOOC for the general public and free of cost, it is a very good admission tactic to be able to showcase not just the teacher by saying that he is good in this subject. He is actually teaching the subject as it would be taught when you are in the university. So any free MOOCs to students at large being offered by universities, not from Coursera but from your own university, is a good idea for admissions.
Okay.
I think one of the things we need to sort of, if I may just add to that.
Sure. Yeah.
speaking of a previous question in terms of hyper local, etc. I think with digital, it sort of gives us, at least that's what our experience has been, to really fine tune our campaigns and target them to the specific parent group or specific student group that we're looking at, even geographically.
Sure.
So for example, we focused quite heavily on West Bengal, for example, as a state this year, where there was an interest that was coming in, and we realized that's a market that we really haven't tapped. So we sort of targeted specific courses, and suddenly some of the campuses that we didn't even anticipate that students may have an interest or courses that we didn't even anticipate, we identified that. Similarly, for the international student cohort, although our scale is a lot smaller and we're just scratching that market, in specific countries where they might be interested in our courses, we did realize that these things truly work in terms of hyper localizing a specific sliver of population that we're trying to get to, which in conventional media we just don't get. And for a university which is operating in a limited marketing budget, this sort of opens up a significant story. And one area, when I come to shift from that to the topic that Dr. Jawahar was just referring to, see the bit about online education, while people have been at it and whatever, for a lot of universities and colleges, etc., online essentially means instead of talking to a room full of kids, you're talking to a screen, which is not what this is about. The big challenge is not about, me being able to talk to you like this. The question is, how do I make the class engaging for achieving the same learning outcomes? That's the basic part.
Yeah.
The second thing, for example, we started dabbling in using immersive technology, for example. So we have a entire domain we offer our students on Unity and augmented reality and so on and so forth. When we expose that entire story to our faculty, a lot of them can't figure out how do I now realign my entire session plan or completely reimagine it. I'm still keeping the course outcomes and learning outcomes exactly the same, but now I have a technology which possibly at a very low cost can take a student inside a molecule or inside an environment, which then they can open up an experience. So how do you sort of teach in that sort of environment is where I think a lot that needs to be done. We've had a lot of stuff available online. And if you look at, for example, the likes of Coursera, Upgrad and all that, while Upgrad claims a very high completion rate, and that's possibly driven by the amount of money you end up paying, for a course there, which could run into lakhs. But if you look at a Coursera, for example, my own experience has been that completion rate is pathetic. We've been on Coursera, so unless I mandate it, unless I push it, unless it's tightly integrated into my session plan, and the student then sees some value in it, it's very difficult to drive, engagement in an online kind of a scenario. So I think the big challenge, whether it's for admissions or for managing the student experience or for, managing what happens in a class, I think still has a very long way to go in terms of, truly digitally transforming how this online delivery sort of works. I personally believe, for example, that a lot of people have been writing off campuses and stuff like that and saying, the likes of Upgrads, etc., are going to take over and they're going to eat into your share and so on and so forth. Granted that this is a disruption that's coming our way. However, I firmly believe that the campuses will always be relevant.
Yeah.
What you do on campus is going to drastically change. What I engage the student in doing on campus is going to drastically change. But that then opens up a massive opportunity for all of us to literally perhaps even make my turnover go 4x without even constructing a single other hostel. Because, I can, instead of bringing the student in for 10 months, if regulations allowed me and everything else around that is aligned, I possibly can bring in students for 8 trimesters, where they are sort of put into a totally experiential kind of a drill for which you require a physical interaction or a campus.
Right.
And the rest of it, happens in a more engaged way online. So this is a journey, I think, that'll happen over the next, maybe 18 to 24 months. And these things have a habit of sort of overwhelming you. So I don't think it's a long drawn transition. It probably would be at best 2 years.
Oh, I think Mr. Vineet, you're right, and I'm with you on that. I was reading an article by Bain and Company. They had this research on EdTech after COVID, and they compared this online learning in university like a long-term relationship. And they said that long-term relationship looks good for short time, but then finally you need to be physically present to interact with the teacher, with the student, to build that human connection, which might lead to many different ramifications of learning and creation of intellectual wealth right there, which might not. So the online or distance can facilitate it to a point where when you meet personally, then that gets blown away because you're doing something very phenomenal today. So I'm with you on that. I have a question for you, routing it to from Dr. Jawahar, that you all mentioned that the alums will play a major role, right? Your existing students will play a major role. Your faculty will play a major role. So there are three different stakeholders involved in admissions, right? So I would say one is your digital marketing teams who are probably targeting and retargeting for you. Second are the publishers where students go to seek for options like Shiksha and so on and so forth, on which generally the Education Institute give information to list. Call it the directory for Education Institute in India, like a Zomato. And then third are the admission technology players who take all these demand into it and allow you to engage with them, communicate with them, fill the online application form and things like that. So my question to you is that what are your expectations from probably the digital marketing teams, the publishers, as well as the technology that probably takes the demand and helps you engaging, get the forms done, the payments done, and so on and so forth. So each one of them, maybe 30 seconds each, what is your expectation with these three stakeholders?
So I am looking at a coordinated single point agenda for the student so that it becomes easy, which includes lead management, counseling, sharing of the brochures, admission forms sale, accepting of admission forms, having a test, then the selection list to the fee collection. If there is one platform, nothing like it. But usually universities which have been there for some time, they have developed a system of their own. So in that case, something like this is not, but for those who are not having this kind of technology, but are looking for some solution like this during the pandemic kind of situation where they are not, this is a good platform to be.
So Dr. Sarkar, routing to you very quickly, right? Same question to you. Expectations from publishers, expectations from your own marketing teams. Maybe in your case, it would be less marketing, but more print, PR and things. And expectations from technology partners who facilitate the forms and things. So what would be those expectations? So you're on mute.
As I already mentioned, earlier that this university believes in a different kind of things, and yes, that never means that you are not having any digital marketing team. We are also having digital marketing team, and they're doing well. Our advertisement is nothing but that student-driven activities. So that is our specialty. Thing is that in the next time, what is we are expecting that our digital team will be more active in artificial intelligence, in simulation and activities, how it should penetrate across the portal. And I already mentioned that our vision and objective is just to scatter our services to the rural peoples. And this hyperactive local phenomenon, as I mentioned earlier, that already we are penetrating that target populations in nearby to our university. And there is an overwhelming response that we are getting. Although initially we thought of that our will be confined to only that near about in the periphery. But of late we have seen that in this year we have seen that there are a lot of students are also coming from different states. Especially we are getting a lot of students from Bihar, Jharkhand, and Odisha, and there are some students are coming from MP and UP. So this is nothing but that is a word of mouth of our students only. So probably that is percolating down the line. So our expectation is that the digital team should be more active in technology in coming days. That is the objective of the university and vision of the university itself. So that is the expectation from them, and I believe they'll be doing well because there is a lot of training activities and a lot of new things are coming up inside that team, and I believe that they'll be doing good in the next few years again.
So, moving on from there to Dr. Samantha, to you, the ways to engage a parent and a student, because there is a demographic dividend shift in the people there. So maybe baby boomers are more parents, Gen Z are more the students today. And when I was studying my undergraduate at Bharati Vidyapith University in 2009, I received a letter and an email, and I physically went with my parent to the campus, went and looked at the mechanical department, and finally took admission, right? But now probably WhatsApp, maybe a chat, or maybe some kind of announcement on Instagram channel and things like that might also be one of the ways to broadcast your message. So my question to you is that during the admission, and as well as I would say not even admission, during educating the kid about your brand, right? Who is probably coming to terms and knowing about them from friends, family, and word of mouth. Are you seeing the ways of engagement being changing from the phone call or traditional email to more WhatsApp, more Google post or a Google ad and things like that, or website and landing pages becoming more significant for them because that's how they consume information and content? So are these new age of communicating, engaging with the prospects? If that's the case, then what are you doing at KIT and what is happening there? And what are you seeing?
What I have understood that, as I have already spoken previously, that the peers, the alumni, the recruiters, they create the values in the public for any academic institutions. Already those people act as the ambassadors. And while those values are created, then aspirations are also created among the youngsters for the admission in any institution. And whatever my experience says, that those digital platforms or the my marketing team, they have to devise the mechanism, they have to devise the tools how to connect to those aspirations. Now, rather than from devising a system for spreading the messages of the institution, for the institution like us, which is very much established, which has created a brand and values in the market, for them it's very much required to develop a system for the marketing research and to have the sufficient idea about the aspiration of the youngsters and to create a system how to connect to that aspiration. That's now is very much required for my digital team. While I work with my digital team for the admission, we see that what are our target audience. Suppose I say that for my engineering, most of the students are coming from East and North India. Most of the students are coming from East and North India, and other 25-30% are coming from those other places, and these many students are coming from abroad. And for medicine, the students from this many percentage are coming from East India. Lots of students are coming from South India. This many students are coming from this area. So what are the values are created in my institution that I am able to match with the aspiration of the youth in different parts of the country and also in the globe? So accordingly, it is the responsibility of my digital marketing team to learn that aspiration and to devise the mechanism to connect to that. Maybe in some places the analytics will work. Maybe in some places the arts with different features, like we do employment, we do academics, we do research. We also help the students in engagement and innovation. Such type of arts also may act as the connector to the aspiration of those youngsters. So in different places, different type of advertisements are required. And coming to the online courses, whatever you are talking about today, EduTech platforms, I was very much advocating in some forums that whatever you are talking about, the different EduTech platform, I personally believe that academic institutions, they never only communicate the information. They don't only pass on the generation of this knowledge to the next generation. That's not only that their basic objective. What I believe in academic institution, the trust plays a very vital role. Trust of the people and trust of the system, trust of the people, those who teach and those who learn from the people. So that trust plays a very vital role. And this is a place where the people, system, environment, nature is integrated. The students get exposure to the information. They get a sphere to experiment that knowledge. They get the system or their co-learners to experiment that knowledge, that whatever they have learned from the class, that's true or that's not true. all academicians are present here, we all understand that only 15% learnings happen in the classroom. That means the communication of information, exchange of information between faculties and students, that add values only 15%, and other 85% happens while they discuss with the peers, while they engage themselves in different academic activities, the research activities. That level of engagement and learning happens there itself. So while for that, the physical learning is very much required. While they get the scope to experiment, they get the scope to create the impact, and they learn that what is true, what is wrong, what is right. While as such, while they will be going to the society, they will have the confidence to experiment that knowledge. They will learn how to connect to the society, because society is not only a digital platform, it's with the people only. They will learn that how to connect to the people and how to experiment with that.
No, absolutely. I think, trust, you mentioned about this word trust. I was reading a quote that this is one of the most important thing in the world, because it's always in high demand because it's always in less supply. So I think, very pertinently said. So we need for you a question before we move to, the final set of questions, that somebody who's driving 70% of the admissions digitally, right? What are those 3 or 4 core metrics that you generally track for a lot of people in the audience who might be aspiring to get into that zone where a majority of the demand is generated digitally, and you probably might have practiced that art. So what are the 2 or 3 important metrics when you have your discussion with your admission and marketing teams you track? So I would really love to know those things.
The overall KPI that we were working to this year, when we looked at the data over past admissions, we realized that our cost of student acquisition was fairly high. And that was a function of a few things, where we were doing our media spend, the kind of people that we're targeting, how much value are we getting back from, some of the initiatives we were taking, some of the partners that we were working with. When we looked at it, based on whatever data we had, we very quickly realized that, some of the channels like print, etc., weren't doing much for us, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, there was a big push that we took towards television and some of the direct-to-home channels. And we realized while the cost of a DTH channel was probably a little lesser than let's say, ad on a national TV kind of a story, but when I looked at the return that I got, it wasn't much. So the one key metric that I was looking at, essentially, obviously beyond the absolute number of admissions, is what is my cost of student acquisition. That's point number 1. The second KPI, which falls under this, essentially is, so that's the main KPI that I'm looking at. Two main KPIs, which is the absolute number of admissions per course that I need to achieve, and that's split up into geographies and courses and so on and so forth. Because that sort of then feeds into, because the fees are different, the scholarship levels are different, that feeds into how much revenue, etc., am I going to make. And the other thing about, as we all are painfully aware, although that's changing a bit, so far traditionally universities, because our intakes are 1 or 2 a year, we make all our revenue in a few months, and then subsequently keep spending it throughout the year. And if I miss a cycle, or if I don't do well in a cycle, that stays with me for 3 to 4 years, depending on the duration of the course. So each of these cohorts, when we sort of take in, is extremely important. So first thing was the absolute numbers, and then breaking that up into various courses, etc., because that directly affects my top line. The second bit that we sort, and not just the top line, it also dictates the kind of faculty capacity, lab capacity, hostel capacity, and everything else that goes around that. So it has a very significant impact. The second KPI that we track essentially is the cost of acquisition of a student on an average. So we set pretty aggressive targets to sort of bring that down in this year, and that digital then automatically comes in once you sort of looking at these 2 KPIs. Now under that, there are a whole load of KPIs that we looked at. For example, where is our ranking on the keyword searches that sort of happen online. Best engineering courses in Bhubaneswar, best management school, best this, best that, whatever way students search in terms of that. So we did fairly intensive research on that and very aggressively focused on improving our ranks in terms of that. Because when we started, Centurion traditionally has been a very shy kind of organization. I was naive enough, my founders are still naive enough to believe that if they do good work, it speaks for itself. Unfortunately, it doesn't. So you have to brag about it. So that's why we had to sort of, get out, and become a lot more aggressive than we currently are. So that was another metric that we sort of looked at from an analytics perspective. And this is a weekly review where we spend about an hour and a half plus with all our partners to sort of look at, where are these ranks going? What sort of traffic is coming to our website, for instance? What are our bounce rates? What do we do to change the content to sort of improve that? Do I add alumni credentials? Do I add placement stories? Do I add my faculty's profile, etc., so on and so forth? So it's a pretty dynamic sort of a thing that we do.
Sure.
Then underneath that, on our social media platforms, with Facebook being our primary driver, each campaign that we bring out, so there's a calendar that we work to every month, where we tentatively plan various posts. Some are event driven, some are general posts, some also are driven by the kind of volume I may have achieved in a specific course. If I'm lagging, then I'll disproportionately start spending on that course. Or if a campus is lagging, then I'll start promoting that as a location. So we plan that out upfront. And then for each campaign, we do a review in terms of how much traffic did it generate for the website, how many people actually ended up filling up the form, gave us the relevant information. Because the belief is obviously if somebody's coming to your website and filling a 3-4 row form and giving the correct credentials, the possibility is that they're interested in it. So, so those are tactical things that we review and fine tune as we sort of go along.
Right. I think what for the audience, I think the three things I hear: return on ad spend is basically what you're talking about. One, the cost of acquiring a student split wise into different channels because they must be coming from different channels. That's a very important metric. And the overall cost of acquisition for a particular student across on an average across all, so basically what you're saying is more of a P&L kind of thing, right? So I have an inbound revenue coming in and I have an expense to it, and that needs to be matched in order to run a very fine, well-oiled machinery in the college from that perspective to it. Right?
I mean, the principles of again, my view is not an educationist view. Mine's a very commercial business view, and that's my job. At the university. So I basically am focused, number one, on managing obviously our revenue and costs. The second KPI that I look at is managing our student experience. Because all of us have in different ways said that our current students, our alumni, are our biggest ambassadors. Hence, whatever they experience on campus is what they're going to carry in terms of that. So the big shift that we're trying to make is that outside the classroom and the basic disciplines that a student needs to follow, how does that experience transform, and how do we start treating them like customers who keep our lights on? So
Absolutely.
So that essentially is a big shift for an education institution. For some of the entities in different sectors, it's an easier shift. But for an education institution overall, where still the Guru Shishya Parampara, so to speak, works, it's very difficult to reimagine a student and a parent, as a customer. What I'm saying is logical, but it's very, very difficult to assimilate and internalize and reflect that in your behavior.
Sure.
How do you respond to a student? You spoke of engagement earlier, and some very interesting points to make. The key thing essentially is, unless we start looking at it, from a holistic student experience point of view, and she rightly said that 15% or 20% of that gets formed in a class. But beyond learning, if a student, especially for a hostler, and few of us who sort of lived through that, it almost defines how your life is going to be. I mean, some of the friends you make at that point of time last you through life, and it's very difficult to pick friends like that once you're out of college. You make relationships, but those 5-10 people that you sort of engage with are different. In some cases, you even end up finding your life partner there. For example, I did. So my wife and I were studying together. So it's a pretty profound impact that it has on the 4 years or 2 years or 3 years, whatever you spend on campus. So the second bit that we need to look at in its entirety is the entire student experience. whether that's how they live, what they play, what they consume, how they're treated, what is the experience that they have, when they engage, let's say for a clearance, or for a degree and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of those things that we need to sort of be mindful of, sort of reimagine, what reality are we going to be in even post-COVID. It's a lot of it is going to be the same, but this thing about going back to normality is not going to be the same normal as it used to be. I mean, it's stating the obvious, but look at your own behaviors. I don't think I'll get on a flight to have a meeting if I can avoid it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think in my 4 years, and I come from myself from a data science and consulting backgrounds, spent a lot of time in UK, London, and now when I work with more than 200 plus universities, I see a diverse mix of people who think of their student as a customer, and the whole organization follows that hierarchy. As well as I see people who see more as a Guru Shishya Parampara, and what I see is that blend of both. And in that beads is something which is which is a balancing act that is required, and that's both are equally important, like the yin and the yang. Both needs to go hand in hand. I mean, like, and that's very important. So I think we are ending to the session, and my last question to all of you, and go to Dr. Nilay, to you. And if we meet after a year, right, what would be the success of definition of new student recruitment will be for 1 year? So if we meet after 1 year again on this platform, and if I ask you that, what does success or admissions in 2021 after the aftermath of COVID looks like for you? What would be that ideal success picture for Neosha University and you, sir?
Abhishek, as I already mentioned, and this university is a bit, different from other university. If you see that philosophy, what is, backed by our, our chairman, Padma Shri Harshavardhan Neotia, he's never seen this university as a business entity. That other university, what they do this calculation of profit and loss, and they're saying, that what will be the rate of student acquisitions and all. We never do this kind of business, because our philosophy is totally different. We are in core academics and the research activities, and probably we are doing good, and that is the reason. If you see that past record, we are successively doing, really good. And thing is that, as you have mentioned, that what will be that requirement in 2020-21. Very frankly speaking, what I believe in personally, that there is the technology is there, and our people are there, and we have we have taken a lot of help from different technology an organization itself. We are having a lot of academic software that we are presently using, and very frankly speaking, I should mention that if we are doing this business in such a way that what we are exactly doing, and we are also getting that result, as I already mentioned, So I don't believe, there are many much things is required. Only thing is that we should do, this delivery part, is that academic delivery part in the nice way. But the students are required, and if you see that from the starting from our syllabi, if you see the syllabi of other universities and our universities, it is mostly industry oriented. That we used to meet with that industry, big shots, and we used to ask them what are the requirements, for your industry, because ultimately this set of students will be going to their industry to serve. So we make them, that things, in such a way that we also include, that experts from industry in our academic team as well, and that is really a different, peculiar game altogether. In every and each unit of this Neotia University, you'll find there are a lot of academicians, and there are a lot of industry experts as well. And if you see that, if you just open our website, also you'll find that in each and every department there are at least in a few expert panel that they are mostly from industry. And the delivery is unparalleled to any other university. And from the beginning itself, we used to grow some kind of an environment which is very much that academic and friendly. And our objective is nothing but just to place each and every students after their completion of their these things, their educations. So thing is that, as I already mentioned, that we are just focusing, for 2020-21, the two important things, that probably we are likely to implement, more, aggressive way, that technology, that is artificial intelligence and aggressive, these things, and AR and AI. as well as that the next level we are just thinking that why not to introduce some kind of digital game before selecting the students. So these are the things that actually that new generation people they want basically. So what is the new generation people wants, and we are giving these things through students only. We are focusing in different media, which you call the Facebook, or maybe that other WhatsApp and other things. So our marketing is totally different, or we never call it actually a marketing, So in our thing is that it is a student facilitator kind of things. So in 2021, our expectation is more technology for us, that admission process. Maybe will be going more in online process, and maybe some digital game on simulation technique will be using for selecting the students, because as I already mentioned, the students are more interested to get admission in this university because our fees is very nominal. So here the lies that technique to select the best students. So that is our challenge, and I believe with the use of this technology, we'll be doing good in the next few years.
So what I hear, Dr. Sarkar, is admission intelligence and more of gamification of the
Yes.
whole process is.
Yes, that is our technique you can say.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Samantha, I mean, your 30 seconds, what does successful admission in 2021 look like for KIT?
I have already spoken that KIT is working for increasing the Human Development Index since its very beginning. And KIT is a mission-led university. Our mission is fixed. We believe that we are established to add values to the lives. It can be in education, it can be in livelihood, it can be in quality of life. So KIT works in different front. It educates the students. It has established a tribal school for 30,000 tribal children, which provides the free education. It has adopted around 20 villages and recently 10 panchayats to develop it as the model panchayat, where there will be no unemployability, where we help the people to get the employment, to get the education, and to earn their livelihood. So in different human development activities, KIT is engaged. And coming to the university, till now, as I have said, that KIT is having 30,000 students in campus. Apart from that, we are having skill development center where we are helping around 10,000 rural youth for getting the skill development training and to get the employment. Another one thing is that we are getting around 2,000 to 3,000 students every year from different campuses of this country and outside the country coming to the campus, visiting the campus for different exchange program. And our students also are going abroad for different exchange program, maybe for 6 months, maybe for internship, maybe for research exchange program to different universities in Asian countries and also to European and American countries. So they are going to different places for that. So our objective will be for this year that we are trying to increase our reach to the students. As I have said, we have developed a human development model where everybody can come and they can experiment their talents. We are expecting that more and more students from different universities should come to us. Of course, our own students in campus may be 30,000 or 31,000 next year, as KIT now is expanding, as it is established as a professional universities in past years. But in the last 5 years, we are trying to open more and more social science courses to integrate social science and humanities courses with different professional subjects like engineering, management, and different law and different with medicine, different courses. We are trying to add more ethical and courses based on values to that. So in next year also, we'll be adding some more courses in humanities to the university itself. But apart from that, we'll be expecting that to get more students from abroad, from different universities to visit our campus on exchange program. Or now we are expecting that we have also got approval from different government like UK government through UKD and from some other government to get the foreign students in campus. Maybe it will not be possible for this time to get here physically, but through different virtual mode, we will be getting them in campus and we will be engaging with them. And we want to increase their numbers in coming year. It can be, we are expecting it will be 2,500 by next year, because engaging students in virtual mode is becoming more easier. Perhaps this COVID-19 has taught us. As we are participating in different discussion forum in last few months, virtually, and it has become very easy. Today we are discussing in forums in UK, today, tomorrow it's Delhi, day after tomorrow in USA, somewhere else. It's facilitating our engagement. Maybe for that we'll be getting more and more international students
Sure,
for
ma'am.
engagement in different academic programs this year. That will be our achievement.
So I think being true to who you are, I mean, the human capital index and the human potential is what probably you will be trying to accelerate and build on even the next year is what you were saying.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So before moving to Dr. Jawahar, Mr. Vineet, I'll go past you. So what does success means for 2021 for a digital-led admissions for a university like yours?
Before I sort of comment on that, my personal belief, and obviously, profit and impact are not mutually exclusive. You have to be financially sustainable to be able to amplify your impact.
Yeah.
Unless your promoter has unlimited pockets or they're doing something else, but this is anyway, that's a separate discussion. My simple this thing is, if I'm able to at least double or triple my admission numbers, have the ability to drop my fees by 25 to 30%, and yet amplify the student experience is what would success look like for me. And underpinning this, this is not just empty slogan, so to speak. Underpinning this is a very robust digital transformation strategy, so to speak, which we may succeed, we may fail, we may partially be there, but that's where we're going. So the simple question I'd asked, I started learning this. I'm just stating an anecdote. I'm just hogging some time. I started learning Python when the lockdown started, because I wanted to figure out what this whole story is about, and I was very interested in visualizations and stuff like that. So I subscribed on an app, and I was working on it, and eventually got stuck. I couldn't understand something. So I reached out to one of my faculty, who mentioned to me that they teach Python. So I asked that person a question, and that person couldn't answer. So I, got a little bit of this doubt in my head. So I asked that person a question, that when was the last time you yourself wrote a coherent piece of code? And that person took a while to answer, and I basically just stopped that person from teaching any student whatsoever. So if you're talking artificial intelligence, if you're talking machine learning, if you're talking algorithms, if you're talking multidisciplinary courses, if you're talking smart mobility, you're talking smart grids, you're talking all sorts of fancy words. But where do you find the faculty unless you have the pockets to pay? Where do I find the professionals to truly teach this in a meaningful way? And how much FDPs, faculty development programs, are you going to run to keep your faculty current? So it's not an easy game to be on if you don't have money. So my honest recommendation is, unless we, as private or even state institutions, start managing our affairs to truly focus on what matters, we'll always be sort of in this vicious sort of a cycle of we're not being able to achieve the outcome because AICTE is saying so, or UGC is saying so, or that one saying so. To my surprise, I find the regulators so open to any suggestion that you take to them. Is absolutely fantastic. The current chairman of AICTE or UGC, etc. I mean, they've been open to any and everything that we've taken to them, and so it's been very refreshing.
No, I think
new to.
Now, Ms. Vinita, as a founder and myself who manages, who has raised around $2.5 million and who manages my own P&L, I completely, relate with you on, on your ability to do good depends on how powerful your economics of your own business is. That is what will allow you to do good things, which might be bringing good faculty exchange programs or doing a lot of infrastructure work.
I think the point that Dr. Samantha made about staying true to your mission, I think is extremely important. As long as you don't lose sight of that, and then sort of build everything out in terms of economics and balancing whatever good you're trying to do. I think that's extremely important.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Jawahar,
Abhishek, I have just one point, relating to what you have mentioned. That profit and loss account is really, is good to mention. And it is also required, that I am not ignoring, but there are certain things in this world which should not follow directly, that comes automatically, in some cases through your activities. But I want to maintain, in that case.
Right. Right. No, I think as long as
Yeah.
I think what Dr. Samantha clearly said, that as long as we are true to our mission of helping students to reach their fulfilled human potential and getting to employability, people could have different paths to that. And I am not an academic. I just work with people like you. So I personally believe, as a student and now as a third party who looks at the industry, that if we are true to helping students reach their human potential, the means can be different, but if the goal is the same, then I think we are moving in the right direction. I mean, that's what I think,
Yes.
in that way. So, Dr. Jawahar, before we wrap up, question to you: what would be the advice from your end to the universities and the people today, also in the audience, that for what they should be thinking to make sure they get the right fit students, they have meaningful admissions for the next year? What would be your kind of two-piece advice to them before we wrap up?
So I am no one to advise first, but I can just suggest that one is the utmost need of this time is, with the changing business and cultural scenario, have we adapted our courses to the post-COVID scenario? For example, hospitality is a very personalized service kind of a thing, and most of these universities run those courses. So how do you maintain a distance between a guest and still serve him personally is something which is not a part of any hospitality course as of now. Similarly, the marriage of health and technology, as envisaged by the World Bank and the WHO during these times, is not a part of our curriculum. So we will need to tweak our courses, including the digital access to teachers, and make them aware of how to teach through digital means, which they were caught on the wrong foot during this time, are some things that I am looking at. But larger picture is that the NEP says that we need to reach a gross enrollment ratio of 50% in the next 3 to 7 years. So I am looking at all the universities participating, getting in students from wherever they can, whether it is international, India, whatever, but trying to create courses based on the needs of the students, including the employability of the students, maybe entrepreneurial spirit also. But look at a gross enrollment ratio of 50% very ambitiously. We should be very, and tantamount to that, if you wish to put in a lot of short courses, I am okay with that. I think short courses are things of the past, because the generation Z, as you have been mentioning for the last few times, have become highly impatient. So long courses don't gel with them. Maybe shorter courses can bring up the GER. So I am looking at a large number of students coming back post-COVID to the colleges. I would be very happy to see them overcrowded post the COVID, of course, without any social distancing, and all the colleges, both private and public, flourish. Of course, keeping the public safety of the students in mind.
Absolutely. I think, fabulous, Dr. Jawahar. Thank you very much. I think I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion with all of you. I mean, at times, you really enjoy the panel when you have different opinions coming from different vantages point. It makes the conversation more interesting. So Dr. Samantha had a point of view, and probably, Mr. Vineet had a different point of view altogether. So it's always good to have these divergent point of view. And I'll before I hand over to Chandan, I'll say that my previous boss used to say that the role of any industry and business should be to help your customers, interact meaningfully with their customers. So as experts, our job is to help people like you to do meaningful interaction with your students. And I think if we are true to helping the students get the right fit and then fulfill their human potential towards job, I think we are all moving the same direction according to me in that case. So, with that note, Chandan, we took probably 20 minutes more, but I'm handing over to you. And I thank all of you, for this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thanks so much,
Thank you,
Abhishek. But I guess still we have 5 minutes if you want to take few questions from
Yeah.
the chat or Q&A maybe.
We should definitely.
So that the audience and the attendees should also feel engaged in this deliberation.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see few questions, so I'll try to direct it to the few people. So what is the impact of digital marketing on Education Institute after COVID-19? more of a generic question, but I think Mr. Vineet, would you want to quickly take that for 30 seconds? Impact of digital marketing on education institute after COVID-19.
I hope the impact is right and they get the message, but so, I think the challenge essentially you have when you sort of put a message on digital essentially, in my experience, is the possibility of, in a way which is right, the possibility of getting instant feedback. And it's categorized into 2 or 3 areas. There are some alumni who possibly didn't have a good experience. They'll come and start a different chain of thought. And as we evolved on our social media, I started realizing that we had these clusters of groups, who sort of go after you, in a certain way. And there are others who sort of would counter the narrative, and it's interesting to WhatsApp chat. So the impact essentially that you have there is this becomes almost like a like a 2-way interaction, where you put a topic out or you put a promotion out, and you get a certain sort of response back. And you may think that you're targeting it at a specific group of students or a specific group of prospective students, so to speak. But you do realize that your own current students, as well as there are your alumni, their parents, so on and so forth, the extended are all looking at that campaign, and they're all trying to compare it with the kind of experience that they had. Sure. If they find a match, they could be or whatever. If they find, then they could welcome it or they could criticize it. So those are the kind of things that as an institution we sort of need to balance. So that's the sort of impact that you sort of tend to get in the communities that you basically tend to target.
Sure, makes sense. So Ujjwal, I mean, just add to what Mr. Vineet said, that it would also allow you to do move from the hyper local. So probably a student from Kerala can come and study at KIET. So it allows you the flexibility that you can reach out to any student without the geographical boundaries. That's the power of digital marketing. It gives you that reach and that targeting of specific different places. So your reach and your diversity and inclusion in your student will broaden because of leveraging digital marketing in a proper way for admissions. So another question is from Prakash Patil: how newly established private university should do to empower admissions, and what's the 3-point strategy that you will recommend? So Dr. Jawahar, would you want to take that? So what should be the 3 action? I think most people would want to know that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I, with whatever little I know, there are 2-3 things. One is a very robust digital marketing combined with whatever other marketing that you do. But as of today, digital marketing plays a majority role. But one of the questions previously given was that if somebody lies on a digital marketing platform, then what? So I said that we should couple it with the student testimonials. Students usually don't lie. Their reviews are very straightforward. The faculty might do that because they have a vested interest. But student and faculty testimonials are coupled with digital marketing robustly. This is one. The second is you should have 360-degree virtual visits of the campus, especially the hostels and the classrooms, for the parents to understand in their time when they are not able to visit. Third is that if you are able to do so, the health point of the student, which as of now is the most important concern for admissions in distant places, is something which need to be focused, and we show virtually how we are cleaning our classrooms regularly, where are the touch points and how they are sanitized, how the student is very safe in our hands, and all those things, and how there is a doctor on call or doctor in the campus, etc., etc. But they are to be shown live virtually. I think these are some of the 3 things that they should be doing.
Absolutely. So, I will also add to that, sir, that, because we look at 200 plus institutes from a technology standpoint. So also making sure that the team members who are a part of the admission really understand the new age trends of digital marketing, because they are the people, counselors who are interacting with the students. They need to be upgraded. And then, of course, a technology backbone that's accelerating them to engage meaningfully fully with the students in the kind of way that the student wants to, like WhatsApp, and more Instagram and stuff like that. So the engagement piece as well as your admission team should be having the right kind of script and verbiage to talk to a Gen Z, audience is also equally important, I would say. So Chandan, I think that's about it from my. So
Yes.
what do you?
So, yes. Thank you so much, Abhishek. I can see Hemant also joined over here. So this is another panel. So I'm very happy to see the organizations like Extra Edge, Colpol, who are helping leverage the bridge between the traditional mode of education to a digital or innovative mode of education. So thank you so much, both the organizations and the leaders of the relevant organizations, Hemant and Abhishek, for leading this journey forward. You are actually shouldering us and giving the strength to the new age education more and more. So good thoughts coming from this. A very well managed and a wonderful moderation, Abhishek, in fact, done by you to this beautiful justice to the topic which we have decided, and the theme of the event has come to an end over here.
I think Chandan, it would have been more fun if we were doing it physically. So I would have been able to interact with all those, with the lady and the three gentlemen, probably over a cup of coffee. But I think this is equally good.
Bang on. You made an emotional comment over here, Abhishek. Who could well attach to this event than me and we all of us? We know how engaging that event used to be. Yeah. So an excellent and wonderful deliberation, I must tell that.
Thank
and
you,
salute to everybody. Salute to your dynamic and commanding leadership, Sasmita ma'am, Dr. Niloy Sarkar, Mr. Vineet Chatwalji, and everyone over here. And so this is definitely a very leading and saluting journey towards, which is transforming the leadership towards the new age of education. Our best wishes to you, all of you, all the team, in implementing the NAP and a smooth and a growth journey towards towards whatever movement you want to make.
Thank you.
You want to make any comment over here, Hemant? Since you have joined, we have few universities. They would like to hear hello from you, maybe.
Thanks, Chandan. Hello Abhishek, old friend. And hello everyone else. I think at some point with some of you, I would have had a chance to interact. I had a question, in fact, but I didn't want to barge in Abhishek's panel because I think admissions are going to be far more dynamic going forward as we have more credit transfers. So if you look at the scenario in Australia, which is one of the countries which has one of the most flexible credit transfers, where students can hop from one university to the other, I think that will be changing the whole dynamics of our admissions, the way they are happening. And that would really bring in the real competition, because right now it's more about how can I somehow get a student inside the campus once, and then the student is mine for the next 4 years. But with that happening is where the real competition would start, where I think that will be really good for the quality of education in the country. So let's see, how things change with that.
Great. So thanks Abhishek, and thanks everybody, Sasmita ma'am, Niloy Sarkar sir, Vineet sir, and I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe, stay healthy. These are the comments which you want to get.